Hello, everyone. I am Eric Denton, and welcome to the Falsifiable Podcast. I have with me today Carlos de la Guardia. And Carlos, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I've been part of the group of people that inspired by Karl Popper and David Deutsch,
Mm.
and to take that in many directions. And in my case, I'm interested in taking that direction of understanding the human mind better and what sets the human mind apart, what makes our minds sort of uniquely powerful. And that's been my focus.
Yeah, when did you, which we've talked about this before, but when did you get into this mode of thinking? Like, as far as like Popperian epistemology, reading Deutsch, like, what was the year that this happened, roughly?
I think 2013.
Yes, me too. Exactly. I wonder if we have a similar origin story here because I actually discovered Deutsch through listening to Sam Harris's podcast one day. And actually I think Tom Hyde had this same, he's a Conjecture fellow as well. He had the exact same story. And whenever he was telling it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's my story too. I was like riding to work one day and I'm listening to Sam Harris and I hear this man speaking, David Deutsch, who I'd never heard of at the time, and was just blown away with what he was saying because he was saying things that were so counter to anything I'd ever heard. For instance, he said something really bold, which was, knowledge doesn't come through our senses. And I remember thinking at the time that was so shocking to me because I'd always thought of science as I was thinking about it in the way of, obviously we learn things through our senses, man. But then whenever you dive into it, it's like, oh no, we create things in our head. Whenever we come across a problem, then we test that against reality with our senses, but it could be false. It could not be false, and at the end of the day, it probably will be false, whatever you're talking about on a long enough times, scale. But okay, so what was your how did you get into Deutsch there? Did you just stumble on them in a bookstore or something or?
I think Sam Harris picked up The Beginning of Infinity
Mm,
and put it on his website as currently reading.
yes.
The books you're currently reading. And so I saw that and picked it up. And then it turns out I finished it before he did.
Oh wow. Yeah, yeah,
I think like a
yeah.
couple of years later, he has Deutsch on the podcast and says, I haven't finished your book yet. And I was like, well, I picked it up because of you and I finished. But hey, go
Yeah.
figure.
That's cool. Okay. And yes, I'm just gonna say the date so we can kind of timestamp this. So this conversation is Tuesday, July 29. This is sort of an impromptu conversation that we're having. And Carlos and I just share a lot of similar interests. Obviously, our interest in epistemology, science in general, I'm sure. But Carlos, you focus mainly on artificial intelligence. What got you into that, and how does one even go about that?
By the way, this is going to be a two-part or a two-sided conversation because you're also writing a book on Darwin. So I
Yes, yeah.
want
Oh,
to I
okay,
want to go
okay,
back and forth on all that kind of stuff.
okay.
Uh, but yeah, no, I think the sort of Popperian worldview is very broad and interesting. That it can touch on many different areas, from politics and raising children, and all kinds of different aspects of applying the growth of knowledge to different areas. And so this is kind of just like one topic area, one
Mm,
industrial vertical that's interesting, just looking at the human mind. Um, and so I think Deutsch has a chapter on artificial creativity
mm,
in his book, and that sort of gets into the AGI type questions and the Turing test or this or that or whatever maybe. And then he also wrote an essay in Eon magazine called like "What's Holding Us Back from Artificial Intelligence?" Basically, how close are we, and that kind of question. And it kind of lays out an argument there, saying it's definitely possible to do it. Our minds exist; they're physical machines. There's nothing magical about them. So if this particular collection of matter can do this activity of knowledge creation, then if there's nothing special about that particular kind of matter, and the same ideas could take hold in some other physical system, performing the same computations, then we should be able to figure out what that takes.
mm.
Um, And we haven't done that yet. And we have lots of things that are interesting, improving all sorts of dimensions. That's why we have ChatGPT and so on. And but I think his analysis at that time, before ChatGPT, long before, was something like, kind of a good quote. It's like building existing algorithms and improving them and making them bigger and bigger and better is like trying to build skyscrapers so high that they can fly.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah, yeah.
It's like it's just a categorical error. Uh,
Mm.
so anyway, I think that was a
That's
fun
a
thing. And
oh man. Yeah, that's a good analogy or a good quote. That really
so
sells it
big
right
clap
there.
for Deutsch on
Yeah.
that. Phrase.
Yeah. Oh man. Um okay, and as far as like in your interest is AGI though, so the general in that being how do you define that? Is it when a system's able to break rules, when a system's able to create, when a system gains consciousness, whatever that is? How do you define that?
I never think about consciousness because I don't think about it.
Yeah.
It's the hard problem, and then it's hard to think about, and I have no insight into that. But then there's these questions of just what is it that makes some systems able to figure out how to go to the moon, and other systems never seem to be able to figure that out.
Mm,
So it's more of a capability question.
mm,
I think other researchers have said something similar, like it's not about or they're not focused on consciousness; they're focused on capability. I think I'm in that same group. Um, as far as the G in general intelligence, I identify that very much with the idea of universality, something which can do anything. And there's an infinite difference between anything and many things. So I think
mm.
that's a key distinction because, yeah, no matter how large a finite thing is, it's infinitely far from infinity.
Right.
So anyway, that the key idea is, I think, that sort of idea of universality, that's complete, can do anything. The question is, though, that if you take as your starting point, let's say, the idea of a universal computer that can compute anything,
Mm.
and then you might say, what's wrong with that? Isn't that everything that you'd want? And well, you could point out to all the universal computers that we have all around, and they're not like us. So that's not enough to be able to
Mm.
compute anything. You need something else. So what else do you need? And I think the answer is basically, at a high level, consists of only two things as far as AGI is concerned. The first is, can you come up with anything? Any computable idea, can you generate it? That's actually
Mm.
more than a Turing machine or a universal computer, because a universal computer can run any given program,
Mm.
but an intelligent system isn't given programs as to make programs.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's good.
And so you need not only the ability to sort of run a given program, but generate them as well. So anyway, that's half of the thing. That's like, okay, can you come up with good stuff and use it and compute it and all that? But then the second thing is, it sounds simple, but it breaks down into many different things. But the second thing is just, having created something, can you then use it?
Mm.
Which isn't trivial, because you could imagine, like, oh, I forged a beautiful sword or a hammer or something, and you can make it, but then let's say you have no technique for using it. It's too heavy for you to lift, or whatever the case may be. So
Mm.
you are capable of making many excellent ideas and tools, but lack the ability to wield them. And so when it comes time to make better and better things, nothing you've made will be available to you to use. You'll have your original toolkit, your own little
Mm.
wooden hammers and primitive chisels. That's all you'll have as the tool bag for the next thing. Obviously, you'd like to be able to make great things and then use those great things.
Right.
Yeah. And that breaks down into many different smaller abilities. But at the high level, those are those two things. Can you make exquisite, objects, mental objects, and then can you wield them and use them to
Mm.
continue making even better things?
Mm.
Like, neither of those is trivial.
Yeah, that's wild. What got you, what did you read a book though that got you on the path of artificial intelligence, or what was it that actually put you down this path that inspired it, would you say?
I think I've always been interested in the mind to some degree. I think, like, the
Mm-hmm.
first time I visited, like, a nonfiction aisle of a bookstore, like
Mm.
like a university library or something, like while I was in high school, I picked up a book. It was about It was called A Brief Tour of Consciousness from V.S. Ramachandran.
Oh,
And,
okay, yeah, yeah.
so a famous neuroscientist, and so I looked at that, and I don't know how big a role that had, or if I had some pre-existing interest, but I think that's the first time I picked up a book explicitly about the brain, and who knows what role that had, but eventually I think the Deutsch stuff at the beginning of Infinity was the thing that actually kind of gave me a certain set of ideas that were kept chugging away. Like I remember
Yeah.
at one of my jobs, I was doing robotics, and there are two interesting things that happened at this job regarding this, which is I started reading The Beginning of Infinity, or I had read it, I was rereading it, and I was excited about it, and I was telling people about it, and they would say, like, why can't you be this excited about work?
Yeah.
So now I have to make it my work now.
Mm.
But then, secondly, there was actually a section of the book that said, suppose that you are a graduate student in robotics, trying to make robots walk better than they have previously. I was like, that's exactly my job description. I was telling people, like, hey, look, that's us. But go figure.
Man, okay. Well, let's talk about this. Will get us into talking. You can, or if you wanted to ask me some questions too, this subject, which is you were just mentioning it, creativity. Today I was actually listening to, while I was working, I was listening to the chapter in Popper's Open Society and Its Enemies, Nature and Convention. And in that chapter, he's differentiating moral laws with natural laws and how to approach these things. Where do these things come from? And his view, and it's a view now that I've adopted as far as I can tell, is by the way, whenever anybody's reading Popper, it's not like he has his books, you have to actually sift through quite a bit to get the kernel of what he's up to there because they're not. Deutsch actually has a great mechanism where at the end of each chapter, he'll explain with some bullet points exactly what he was saying there. Whereas Popper doesn't really do that. So you have to really go through his work and sort of sift through it and kind of figure it out that way, which is cool for people like myself who want to write about Popper because, hopefully we can do that, do that work. But anyways, I was reading or listening to this, and it's all about creativity, whether even when it comes to morals and moral, we can't derive an ought from an is. This is something that Popper accepted. He has no qualms with that. However, we do have things like morals in the world. They probably most likely came from religion. Generally, morals and ethics come from religion or some sort of traditions in the past. They sort of just arose. We don't know the history of it. But what Popper points out is that's really not important, though, knowing the origin of this stuff or this is like that's a very Platonic way of thinking where you have to Plato would he put forth the idea of the what is it idea forms and ideas, which is like this Platonic world where everything was perfect, and then only from there everything degrades or goes downhill pretty much as it change. Any kind of change from that is a downhill slope. Anyways, Popper doesn't accept any of that. He just says that these things naturally grew. We don't know exactly how. However, they do exist. Therefore, we can criticize them. These are things we just adopt. For instance, if you were a Christian at some point in your life and then you say you're not a Christian anymore, however, you retain Christian morals or ethics, you can just adopt those, but disregard the authority of Christianity, the Bible, and just take a look at those ethics and say, well, listen, here's what I think. I actually like A, B, and C. However, this whole thing about homosexuality where they say that that's not natural, that's whatever. By the way, that's a odd is distinction. Whenever people say homosexuality is not natural, I'm like, well, you're doing exactly what Hume said we can't do, which is derive an ought from an is. Who's to say what we can invent anything, and morals are exactly that. Anyways, all this to
The funny
say,
thing would be, what if it turned out that like the distant past of all animals was homosexuality or something?
yeah, exactly, yeah,
We'd say, we'd be hostage to history in that case.
yeah,
Like now
yeah.
everybody has to be gay because that's how it all started out.
Exactly. So exactly. It's a good example. So anyway, so the reason I started thinking about this though is like I like the idea and I think it's true that we invented morality. Some point in history, we creatures with our general intelligence thought, I don't like this way of living, therefore I'm going to choose to live this other way. And then you had, your neighbor said, well, I don't really like what you just said there. Let me critique that a little bit. And then so on and so forth. And you form ways of living that everybody can, get behind or that's within your specific community. And, anyways, I just think that that's so cool. But the thing about creativity is not only is it, in the moral sphere because you can create different ways of living and then you can open it up to criticism. So it's objective in that way. But it's also within science. Everything within science, all knowledge comes from creativity. And likewise, whenever you're writing a book or doing art, this creative engine is what I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I feel
Yeah.
like the G in artificial general intelligence is like that. That's to me what large language models thus far are missing. Even if you ask, and maybe I'm wrong, you could correct me on this,
I got
Carlos,
a
but
little
like,
distracted because I saw outside my window a helicopter and then also an eagle.
yeah,
You can continue now.
yeah. Even if I uh let me think here. So yeah, I think that that's sort of I think it's the missing ingredient, but like for instance, I will say something to Chat GPT. I'll say write a paragraph about blah blah blah, and you can even say like make it a little imperfect, make it this, make it that, make it this, but then it does that stuff so precise that it seems kind of boring. And it's just kind of like, well, this isn't even like fun to read. I kind of like a person because they have these weird quirks about them that are
Yeah,
strange.
I don't think it's the quirks per se that make somebody interesting. I think it's more that you recognize the difference between sort of being interesting on the one hand and being grammatical on the other. It's
Yeah.
easy. Turns out it's easy to be grammatical to some degree, easier than people thought it probably would be. But then it turns out that a human is trying to say something in an interesting way, or even apart from that, the exact things that you include depend on a theory of what the person would like to read. Yeah. So
Mm,
you cut out what's boring and you condense on the good bits. You kind of have to know a lot about somebody to make a funny joke, for instance. And this
mm,
is kind of the basis of the book from Daniel Dennett, and then I forget who else. It was a book called Inside Jokes, which I have picked
mm,
up but not fully read or read much of it all. But it takes the premise that humor is an interesting window into how the mind works,
mm.
and it kind of asks the question like, what does it take computationally to either like make or then appreciate jokes? Because it really is about the exact experience you go through as a listener. You hear X, Y, and Z, the setup, and then you hear the punchline. And if you were to flip those two out of order, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
be led on the path that you think goes left, and only then, when you show that it goes right, you have an experience that we might call humor. Uh, but yeah, if you just say we're going to the right and you end up on the right, it's very different.
That is, yeah. So as far as creativity goes, though, this has been the thing I've sort of been thinking about at least this week. What, how, and I ask a lot of people that I asked Deutsch this, and I asked, I think I might have asked Sam Kuipers this the other day, but like what kind of gets your juices flowing whenever you want to get up in the morning and you're trying to work on something like, whether it's with artificial intelligence or writing or music or whatever you're doing, how do you go about it? Do you just fiddle around with stuff until you click onto something, or like what is this may sound benign and boring, but like actually I'm fascinated with how people do this because sometimes I play guitar. So like whenever I'm writing, if I'm making a song, I'll generally just be twiddling while I'm watching TV or something, or even I'll be watching a show that inspires something or a soundtrack, and then I'm off and running. Is that how you approach like writing or working on artificial intelligence or any of the things that you're doing?
I got a guitar as well, and I like noodling a bit. The
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's sometimes I'll be reading, and so more recently, to kind of get back into the flow of writing, I was just listening to Douglas Hofstadter's book,
Mm.
"I Am a Strange Loop,"
Oh yeah.
and so I just kind of would let that go. And then as I had a thought, I kind of stopped and started writing about it. And I have this whole bunch of notes in an app called Roam. And so that's all the defining feature of which is that you can connect different notes. So you almost have like a website with hundreds of pages or thousands of pages of your own. And so that's what I use mostly. And I have like 1,000,000+ words in that thing.
Yeah.
So in that case, I was kind of listening to a book and then reacting to it myself. And sometimes the value of a book like that is that you learn something that they wanted you to learn. And sometimes it's more that you disagree with that and you kind of have your own thing. Or also it reminded me of some other stuff I had thought about. And so I kind of developed those a bit more. At other times, it's a bit more just that I have my own bunch of things, and there's sort of a cutting edge of that, a set of notes that I'm working on. So I have a whole bunch of stuff written down that I feel like I have somewhat worked out in my head and on the paper. And there'll be some specific question that is sort of this cutting edge that I don't know, like, well, with that part of it, that's not clear yet. And so I'm kind of like, exploring that. So right now for me, that's like, over like the last few years, I feel like I've taken Popper's idea of like a 4-part series of steps from of how knowledge is created, and kind of like try to see like, is there anything there that can be tweaked? And that was one of the initial places I kind of started from. And is there any way to like clarify what Popper thought about knowledge creation and see it in a more computational way, and so you can actually build it. And so that sort of leads you down a certain set of questions, and you kind of take his 4 chunks of the process and break them down and see, is there any way to reevaluate each of those and go through all that? And then you start saying, well, this other idea about universality, for instance, he didn't really address that. So if I try to like mix his 4 ideas with universality, and that's another set of 4 questions and whatever comes out of that. So this is part of the process that trees and branches and forks and all this sort of thing. Until that now I'm more focused on like, okay, I feel like I understand my version of Popper's stuff.
Right.
Sort of, okay, so I have that more basic view of the chunks in there. And now it's more like what physical systems or sort of more abstract programs have all the properties that I would like. So I've sort of, I guess I would say like a lot of my work up to now has been to try to figure out like what are the requirements of an AGI? Like what are the high level things it should be able to do, and kind of come up with a laundry list of those things, and then now put that to one side and ask, okay, well, if that's what you wanted to do, what kinds of programs can do those things, and do each of them individually, all the things that you want, and then do them all together at once, which is a separate, integrating all these different things.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I'm at now, like trying to. I think I'm like getting a little bored at this point with like trying to figure out what it needs to be able to do. I think I'm getting that more clear. So
Yeah, that's good.
how can you implement it a little bit? So,
Well, I like how you work on stuff because you've done videos and whenever you do like cool diagrams where actually you were just doing it right now, just without the markers, you draw circles and you do like, that's really cool. And actually got me to thinking like that too, because actually watching one of your videos, I started, what was I thinking about? It was, oh man, this was recently. I was thinking about something and I did that where I was like, let me write this down and like actually draw a picture of it. And for some reason, just the visualization of like a circle and then like sort of like a Venn diagram thing started forming. And I was like, this makes this a lot easier and accessible to me than just words on paper suddenly. So it's like a cool mechanism that I see it in books sometimes. I'm always impressed with it, but like I've never actually tried it until I saw you drawing on the clear marker board that you had on one of your videos, which I thought was really cool.
I'm a big fan of visuals. Yeah, I'm trying to see if I have any good examples in my little notebook here. But I get a lot of mileage out of just like, for my work at least. The 2 visuals that come up most is sort of a circle representing a set. And then various overlappings and different circles and whatever, and then also arrows kind of representing like more functions, like okay, this means that and this means that, and then the other class of visualizations is often useful is just like a tree, branching structures, that kind of thing, where often it's about different decisions in a way where you kind of start at one point. And if you have, for instance, a bunch of ways that you could go, you could represent all those different options in a tree. And so you go number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. and each of those has its own options. So you have this sort of combinatorial explosion of options on options
Yeah.
on options, branching on branching. And then in the course of thinking of ideas, in a sense, you are choosing one of those branches along the way. And a good idea is maybe 20 steps down the line, down some branch. And the challenge of intelligence is figuring out how to get to a good idea, given you don't know which branch it's on.
Mm.
And if you look at all the branches that are 20 steps away, it's like trillions and trillions and trillions. So
Yeah.
how do you find that needle in the haystack and try to narrow and backtrack and cut away branches and this sort of thing, and end up down the correct series of sort of lefts and rights and all that.
Man, that's a cool.
All the good ideas are hidden somewhere in that sort of branching space.
Yeah, that's cool. That's kind of like a visualization of the world in a sense of like determinism in a way. Like there's all these paths. If I could step back from my life right now and just examine which path I should take, basically you're doing that. You're just simulating all the worlds that you could potentially be a part of, except you're doing it on paper, and that's really cool, man. That's a good idea.
I think part of it is also seeing, like it's not just about worlds or decisions exactly, but it's like a more general thing that incorporates not only those things, but also just, for instance, one area that's talked about sometimes is like assembly theory
Yeah.
on Twitter. And my favorite thing about that is just this one particular image that kind of covers some of these ideas about branching. And one of the points that they make is that molecules can be combined in different ways. And if you have different molecules and atoms, whatever, you can apply this question of which of these combinations do you want to produce next? So if you imagine that like one molecule is labeled A, another B, another C, and so on, you have a bunch of options about how you combine them. So initially you have just a bucket of individual letters. But then you could mix an A and a B, or a B and a C. And then once you have an AB, maybe you could use that as its own component. And so you have an A and then an AB.
Right.
And
Yeah.
A and B, and you can combine them in different ways. And if you kind of list at every stage all the possible combinations, it grows and grows and grows and grows. And so in a way, that's a way of constructing things out of smaller things.
Yeah.
To smaller things to make big things. And you could think of that as being ideas as well. Like the computational elements you might begin with are a couple of small programs labeled A, B, C, and so on. And then you could say the next program I think of or come up with will be, A, B, or B and C, or whatever, and then on and on and on, until down the line, 1,000 steps later, you have a very complicated arrangement of A's and B's or whatever. But part of the research is sort of starting to see that all these things are the same kind of thing, whether it's molecules or ideas or decisions. That's all this part of this sort of branching sort of structure, which is exponential and grows real fast, and therefore makes it very hard to find things in that. But anyway, so the part of the fun, I think, of epistemology in general is trying to see how things which seem on the surface to be very different are really all the same kind of thing. Because if somebody was to say to you, hey, epistemology may apply to science, but not to figure skating or something, you say, well, actually, you're wrong about that. If you want to become better at anything, the same basic principles will apply. And, it's not suddenly the case that in the domain of Romanian figure skating or something, you can authoritarianism suddenly works, and you can just trust people, the Lord.
That's it. Everything's kind of actually everything to me, and it might just be because I'm looking through everything like through a Darwinian lens, but everything is very Darwinian. Daniel Dennett in his book Darwin's Dangerous Idea compared Darwin to a fictitious substance called universal acid. And basically, the idea is that what universal acid is this substance that nothing can contain. It burns through everything, sort of like in the movie Alien, how like it goes through the spaceship and then it goes through the next floor and then they're like, "Holy crap! This is gonna put a hole in our spaceship. We're all gonna die." He compares that type of thing, universal acid, to Darwinism, which is it. Whenever it was put forth by Darwin, and Darwin actually knew this, and at the time, he talked about how this was going to change ethics and morals and everything. It had the potential of doing that, and it did. and it certainly changed knowledge growth too. At least how we think of knowledge growth. It was Darwinian, regardless whether we know it or not. But what you're just saying there, just it basically it's similar in the sense that yes, everything has this like branching thing where it just grows and grows and grows, and then you have like you run into maybe a problem here, problem there, but like it'll keep growing, and it's just like everything in life is like that, though it seems like whether we're talking about actual matter or ideas or it
Yeah.
all has that similar construct. Do
So
you
if
sort
you
of see
took
that?
since you said you play guitar also, I think you could look at that and say, what is a melody? And let's say if you want to have a catchy melody, well, it's going to be a series of notes. And so what
Yeah.
you have there is a structure
Yeah.
of things that could be put together in different ways.
Mm.
In this case, it's like a single string. So it's a single string of notes. It has the same structure for our purposes as a single string of bits
Mm.
or of nucleotides in DNA. For the
Right.
purposes of this calculation of combining things, a string of things is a string of things. Doesn't matter what the things are. So notes, if you then ask the question, what series of notes should I pick to make my hit song or whatever, then you have the 12 notes of the chromatic scale, whatever. And so you have, those are the choices that you have if you want to stick within that scale. And somewhere in there will be your hit melody, let's say.
Hmm.
So, but to find it, you have like several variables about like which note for how long, not to mention the vastly more greater set of questions about like exactly which instrument and how you use it. And a vocalist can tens of thousands of options in a sense for how they sing one note, much less
Mm.
a whole series of them. So as you start to see the options, basically, you start to see that finding a good hit melody in the space of all melodies and performances and all this is a tall order. If you were to map out the full space,
Yeah.
uh, uh,
Basically infinite, I think. I mean, or nearly, I would
no,
say.
well, not at all, actually, in one sense,
Mm.
because for practical purposes, yes, it's very big, and you're like, okay, it's big enough not to fit on your hard drive or whatever. Like it's crazy big, but that's infinitely far from infinity.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
there's a useful concept that I like to talk about to call sort of I guess I haven't come up with a good name for it yet, but like the idea funnel or something.
Yeah.
Um, and at the highest end of the funnel, the widest end, there is just the infinite set of all things that can be thought of. That's everything that's possible. Um, and this is basically everything that is computable.
Mm.
So that's an infinite set. It's countably infinite. That's the size of that thing. Everything is computable. Um, Somewhere down the line, there's a set of everything that you currently know in your head right now.
Mm.
That's an important set to look at. And below that, actually, even smaller, is a set of ideas that are in your head that is currently active.
Mm.
And that's almost like the Popper's searchlight, where you have everything that's in your head, and you're using bits and pieces at different times. Suddenly you're on the golf course, you're using golf ideas. Then you're on the guitar, using the guitar ideas. You're,
Yeah.
you're, you're using different parts of that. And obviously, you want to be using the right parts. You don't want to be thinking golf while you're playing guitar, and like it doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the smallest end of the spectrum. Is the things that are active in your head right now. You zoom out. That's everything that you have in your head right now, or that is in your head at all, not merely the ones that are active.
Mm.
Then beyond that, there's this sort of middle ground, which is all the things that you could think next,
Mm.
which is all the ways you could combine existing ideas to make new ideas. And so there, you may have an idea for melody A and B that are in your head already. And one of the things you could think next is, what if I just combine the two one after the other?
Mm.
That's one thing. Or you could think of playing guitar on the golf course. Those are two things you know how to do separately. You haven't thought of them together,
Yeah.
and then you
Yeah.
think of them together. And so you have a zillion ideas like that. Every one of your ideas could be combined with any other, let's say, and that whole set of things, which is huge, is a set of things you could think next. But
Mm.
then you could go even further and say, what if I think not only the things I could think next, but what about in 2 steps,
Mm.
or 3, or 4, and so on? And if you were to take that out to infinity, for forever, all the things you could possibly ever think, then that would be the set of everything. Uh,
Man,
and
yeah.
so anyway, when it comes down to things being a large number of possibilities, what we were just talking about was like if I give you 10 steps to make your guitar melody or whatever it is, that's a really big set of things.
Yeah.
But that's still nothing compared to that's a finite set compared to the set of everything which is possibly thinkable, and that's a different thing. But the set of things you could think next, it grows very fast. So yeah.
It's so that's interesting. This is something actually that I did speak with Deutsch about, which is sort of sticking with the idea of creativity and ways of thinking. I think you might have even said something about this on your X, and or you alluded to it or something. But this idea of, is anybody capable of doing or creating great ideas, or is it because here's the thing, and I struggle with this. Um, there are people that are just so like they're like a sieve, or they're like a conduit, or what is they just are good at making great ideas for some reason. They don't even know why it is, but they're just really good at it. And then you have somebody else that might have an idea that's good every now and again, but they don't really do it as much, or it doesn't land or whatever. What is the difference between these people? I mean, is this an intelligence difference, or is this a creative difference? Like, what causes this disparity with humans? I mean, is that something you've ever thought about, Carlos?
A tiny amount.
Mm.
I'm mostly interested in like what separates humans from everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so to me, like the differences among humans are basically zero for my
Mm.
purposes. They're real, but tiny compared to the other differences between us and like squirrels and everything else.
Right.
So like, it's one thing to like lament the fact that you haven't won a Nobel and nobody cares about your work or whatever. But like,
Right. Yeah.
a squirrel doesn't even know that there is something to be upset about there. So there's that. That's not much help to somebody who wants to make particular progress, but like, uh, if you zoom out a little bit, I think that there's a couple of things you could say. Like one thing that actually Deutsch mentioned in his discussion of Jacob Bronowski's Ascent of Man was that Bronowski was never lucky enough to really stumble upon a great insight that would get him recognized as a great
Mm.
mathematician or poet and these things, although he was very good at all these things, apparently.
Yeah.
Said Deutsch. So there's an element of luck in that, like, suppose Einstein had just had a set of different views, maybe he would have looked somewhere else for something interesting, and maybe he would have found something very interesting, but maybe he wouldn't have found relativity. And so, I think there's an element of we all go out and search for things, and hopefully that allows everybody or somebody to find something, but
Mm.
that everybody should find something revolutionary might be too tall an order, even if
Yeah.
we're all doing, in some sense, the productive things. But anyway, I think you can kind of zoom out from that and instead ask some more general questions about like, what does it take to make rapid progress? And that's kind of my general question.
Mm.
What does it take to cope with that infinite set of ideas? Because it is so big, and because the good things in it are so hidden
Mm.
among all the exponentially large amounts of trash in the world of ideas,
Yeah.
that how do you combat that? That's the central question of my research, I guess. Um, so in a way, my research is all about like, number one, can you actually even generate all the stuff in this set of ideas? But then B, what you ultimately want is the good stuff. And being able to generate everything is, that's just table stakes. That's the first thing that you need being able
Hmm.
to generate these good ideas, is just to reach them. But the ability to
Right.
reach the good ideas is the same ability that it takes to reach the bad ones.
Mm. That's
So
interesting.
you need
Yeah.
more than that
Yeah.
as well. You need to be able to sort out the bad stuff and get rid of it as quickly as possible, so that the good stuff uh, is what you end up both finding efficiently and then recognizing that it's good and using that as opposed to the trash. Uh, so yeah, that's part of what you need. And so there's this question um, of efficiency and the costs of reaching good ideas. And there's a whole set of things about that, like, including some of what, like one thing that I like about Popper I mean, I mentioned this to you before. It was that he has this phrase about testability. He
Mm.
says the content of a theory is what it forbids.
Hmm.
Basically saying if it forbids nothing and everything is consistent with this theory, then nothing is inconsistent with it, then nothing could show it to be false. Everything
Right.
with the theory. So what kind of theory is that? Doesn't constrain the world at all. Everything fits with everything. And so that's a claim about theories and their testability. But the same notion also applies to the idea that, like, if you have a theory and it does forbid some things, and it is true, or it's pretty good at least, then that means that all the things that it forbids, you don't have to go looking for. You know,
Mm.
if my equations say, like, if you throw a ball, it will follow this parabolic curve, and that's the trajectory of the ball and gravity and so on. And that theory forbids you seeing the ball elsewhere.
Mm.
So in his mind, that's useful because if you see it elsewhere, okay, you got to throw out the theory. It's bad. But if it's right, if it's a good theory, then in fact the ball won't be elsewhere. And if you're like, where's
Right.
the ball? You should look on the curve,
Mm.
and you don't have to look on Alpha Centauri
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there was no chance that the ball just teleported there.
Mm.
Which, physically, like, you don't know. There's a world in which maybe that could happen. Um, but not in our world. Our theory might be good and says that the ball will lie in this very small line and
Yeah.
nowhere else in the entire universe. That's a hell of an efficiency boost if you're looking for that ball.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Uh,
true.
and every such theory is like that. So you're getting these enormous speed ups and constraints on the world, and every great theory is doing that for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It reduces information, good information reduces entropy. It gives us we suddenly know where to look now for whatever. Even with like Darwinism, like now we know that within Precambrian, like where or certain fossils will be in certain strata, or they won't be in certain strata. So it gives us a focus that we can like now utilize and look for. We can find things that we're looking for, and if we don't find them or they're in the wrong place, then we know something is amiss. Something's not correct here. It's either the theory's wrong or it's our experimentation might be wrong. But yeah, that is cool. That's the thing that's also I find that is really what makes Popper his whole his framing of everything. And I think Deutsch, his like biggest contribution to that, at least in my mind, was this idea of good explanations. When he added that contribution to the Popperian worldview, that kind of is a great, that kind of unlocks a lot for me, at least. Whenever he added, I listened to that, and then it puts forth the idea that basically if it's not if it doesn't appear to be a good explanation from the outset, we might as well not even waste our time on this particular thing. If it's too hard to,
Yeah,
if it's
but
variable and all this kind of stuff. But
yeah, I think it is interesting to trace the sequence of ideas and how it all kind of comes together. I mean, Darwin discovers his theory. Popper gets inspired by that.
mhm.
Incidentally, Darwin was inspired by Malthus, right?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
oh
so
yeah,
go figure. Like today, we're like we look at him as like this great pessimist, and perhaps that's true. But then also inspire these other ideas that turn out to be the core of optimism in a way. So go figure.
oh yeah.
History is
That
complicated.
so I don't want to so to kind of stick with this again, sort of creativity and also this idea that I introduced a moment ago, which is it is controversial. It's like I personally don't like the idea of thinking about intelligence as one person is more capable than another person and so forth. I actually don't think that's the key. I do think though, because even with Darwin, Darwin wasn't he created in my mind like his idea is the best idea. I'm with Denton on this. I think it is the best idea that was put forward. It's the most far-reaching idea that I can think of, even beyond Einstein and who Niels Bohr, all those guys. Um, I just think that it's such a far-reaching idea, the idea of evolution by natural selection, and then within now it's neo-Darwinism, but
Yeah,
uh,
in a sense, it does apply beyond the current physics of the universe. The
yeah,
physics could have been wildly different, and it would make zero difference to the basic principle. As long as it
Right.
could allow, I think, information to exist, then you could have evolution existing.
Right.
So it's a higher level than physics in that way.
Exactly. So but the thing is, the reason I say all that is that Darwin, though himself wasn't really special. I mean, if you read about him, especially his early life, he was just a very common boy. In fact, like many people said that this is the most ordinary kid I've ever seen. Like he wasn't special. He was not great in school. He basically did poorly, like
I think
in all of his college
I think
years.
I think the British comedian David Mitchell said, like on a game show thing, comedy show, it's like I dress as unremarkably as possible, uh, to such an extent, as much as possible, except to the extent that it would itself become remarkable. Uh,
That's yeah, that's it. That encapsulates Darwin to a degree. But then all of a sudden, he by the luck of meeting one of his Cambridge professors, John Stevens Henslow, he got his name in the hat to be on the Beagle voyage, and that changed his whole trajectory. It was like by sheer luck he landed on this particular ship, and he
but
wasn't even. Or
But
go ahead. I'm sorry.
that's like an open question in a way, right? Like I think one set of questions that you're kind of asking is, was he special, genetically or mentally in some way? Another thing you could ask is, was the voyage of the Beagle necessary? I think Deutsch has kind of pointed that it wasn't, and other people had been on ships and seen interesting things, or conversing with Darwin and checking on his observations and these kinds of things. There's actually things like what Malthus and other people looking at geology and age of the world, and there was a whole set of theoretical problems. It was really if you're looking at the great pinball machine that is the world of ideas,
Right.
those bumpers had to be in place for you to then wonder, like, why is the Earth so old, or is it in fact that old? What could happen in that much time? All these
Yeah,
kinds of questions.
it's so true. Yeah, because he goes on the voyage. Charles Lyell was the big geologist at the time, and he had put forth the notion of gradualism, and the Earth is changing at a gradual pace. Darwin grabbed a hold of this idea. I mean, he just thought this was interesting, and Darwinian evolution is, he mapped that on, and because of these other ideas that have been floated before, including Erasmus Darwin, he had floated the idea of evolution by not natural selection, but sort of a Lamarckian evolution. And obviously, Lamarck came before, which is the idea that the way a giraffe's neck gets long is that the parent giraffe stretches its neck to get the leaves, and then he passes on that stretched neck to their children, so on and so forth. The neck gets longer. That's all false, obviously. But those ideas were in place. And then Darwin goes on this trip. He notices there's this weird thing with these birds on this particular what are the Galapagos, yeah, on the Galapagos archipelago. And it turns out he thought that a lot of these birds were different species, but they were all the same species. They're all finches. This is an insight that he had. He noticed, and that they all had different beaks. But the weird thing was they all like were on these particular islands, and this is where theories are so interesting. Is because then he a lot of people think this is where this whole idea of, and this is why I love Popper and Deutsch, and I get excited just talking about it. But you don't see evolution happening. He didn't see it happening. He might have saw it in his mind's eye, but this was a creative idea that just happened to him where he's like, wait a minute, these animals are all like, they fit their environment like a lock and a key. I mean, it's just like, this is weird. Like, why is this? And why? Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question, which is, who was it that came up with evolution also years later?
Alfred Russel Wallace.
So my question is, how did he come to his idea?
Same
Because
similar thing. He was at the Malay archipelago and noticed the similar
I was
instance.
hoping that he had never been to any archipelago, and
Yeah.
the armchair guy. But interesting.
Yeah.
If that's the case. But I also wonder if how accurate that is, or because in some ways it could just be that maybe it's a necessary element of seeing something. My hope and my guess would be that maybe that's not true, and maybe it's like, oh, they all read the same 5 books, and made them, a bit more like that. Because you get, at the very
Because
least, that the other people had been to many archipelagos.
yes, yeah.
So that's certainly not sufficient.
I think that well, at the time, the predominant theory that was predominant was Genesis. So that was the thing. Population thought that the Bible, or at least in Western society, thought that Noah's Ark and all that was real, like, and that was true. But Darwin noticed, and this actually goes to the idea of problems. And again, Popper and Deutsch point this out quite a bit. Problems is where knowledge begins. Darwin notices that, well, first of all, this ark idea doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because why are the animals so different on all these islands, and wouldn't there be an epicenter of wherever the Noah's Ark actually ended up? It seems like there would be a lot of animals around that particular area. But if you actually look in history, or where they think that the ark landed, that's not the case at all. There's not really many animals around. Yeah.
I never thought about taking Genesis seriously and the layout of species near the ark.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So Richard Dawkins points this out in his book, The Greatest Show on Earth, and it's a hilarious couple paragraphs, because he points out, like, I think Mount Arafat or Ararat or whatever it is, like, is where they think that Noah's Ark ended up. But Richard Dawkins was like, well, if we take that seriously, why is it that there's no animals around there today? And why is it that you have only marsupials on Australia? You have only, like, all these animals are in their spots perfectly, and it doesn't match up to the Bible at all. And it does match up with Darwinian evolution perfectly. I mean, it's just like,
I guess my question would be, like, why don't you see a lot of weird dead animals around the mountain? It's like I can take the idea that they got out, but I expect to see a whole bunch of them that maybe didn't survive too well in the mountain area.
Yeah, exactly.
A bunch of bones.
With
Probably
that,
a lot more than whatever species we're left with now, because if half of them died because they didn't like mountains, then you say, okay, there's going to be the big graveyard of Noah's Ark.
right. So, okay. So just to put a fine point on the Darwin thing, the reason I talk about this again, it's like, it's just so interesting. And I think that your point a moment ago, where you said, I wish he wouldn't have went on the voyage, and I wish he would have just came, like, do you say that because it's like,
Well, it's not that I wish he wouldn't have gone, but it's more like, or yeah, with Wallace, I guess.
yeah.
I was hoping that you'd say, "Oh yeah, like he never left his library," and
Yeah.
version. And it's like,
yeah, that would have been, yeah. If
totally
that would have been the if that would have been the case, that would be cool. I guess there are scientists like that. They're like Albert Einstein, I guess, and pretty much those type of scientists. They just sit in a chair somewhere. Deutsch is probably like this. I mean, he sits down, he thinks, and he's just in a room full of books, and that's
But
how he.
on this point, maybe this is for another time, but something that I think was an interesting element of Popper is his discussion of problems. And one of the things that became awkward for me as I would write about it and think about it was that it seemed like the notion was so expansive that almost anything could be described as a problem. And as a result, I found myself saying the phrase, like, problems and opportunities, different things that would maybe come up. Then it's all part of this, what Popper would call problems. But then I started thinking, like, maybe what is, like, the real purpose of problems in his epistemology? And I was thinking, for me, if you, like, zoom out a bit, it's more like just choosing which ideas you want to interact with. And so that if you decide that there are some problem to do with neutrons or something, and this is the problem, the end result of this is that you focus on neutrons and some particular set of ideas that you otherwise wouldn't have focused on. Like, about whales, but you ignore that for these purposes. You're just focused on these neutrons. And that's basically your mind telling you that if you want to discover something good, these neutrons are the place to look. So start coming up with ideas related to those and whatever. And so this same, this notion of problems in the classical version is the case of, like, I thought X and I observed Y and they clash. So let me come up with the Z to solve it.
Yeah.
So that's a very clear conflict of ideas. And so, but there's not just that. There are other more general forms of problems or attention direction kinds of things where if you just see something in the distance that is new to you and interesting somehow, then you might go in that direction
Mm.
and not any of the other directions. So again, you're focusing your resources in some particular way that you think might be fruitful, but it may not take the form of explicit theories or anything. So anything that just nudges you away from stuff that's fruitless, that's boring or whatever, and towards things that are fruitful, that's a helpful thing to have.
Mm.
And this very crisp notion of like a logical conflict is only one version of that. There can be an infinite variety of things that sort of push you away from some things and towards others. And so I call that more general thing attention. And
Mm.
that's sort of my slight twist to Popper's notion of problems.
Man, yeah, I like that, man.
Yeah,
That's cool.
because yeah, think about it. It's just very obvious in retrospect that you would say like, if I want to improve the world, I know so many things about the world that where should you look to find the next improvement? And when you hit your face into a wall, that's probably a good place to start to improve the world. Figure out a way to do that. So then you focus all your resources on walls and your face and how they should relate to each other,
Yeah.
and you very quickly solve that problem and improve the world and no longer hit your face into the wall. Had you had all these same experiences, but were like a natural selection and evolution, you would have hit your face into the wall and you would never have thought in response to that. Your genes would have just mutated in some other way, and then your
Mm.
tail would grow longer. This does not help with the wall. Yeah. So anyway,
I love
it's focus
that.
with focus resources.
Yeah, I like that, man. That's a cool addendum or add-on too. Um, okay, so in this last couple minutes, I always like to ask people, and by the way, I think this would be cool. Like maybe Carlos, you just come on sort of randomly or regularly, and we just sort of go through what
I
is.
still haven't heard about your book, so I gotta. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And yes, we will get to that, which is it's a book about Darwin and Popper and the and I have some interesting, or at least I hope they're interesting to people, ways of explaining this that are really weird and sort of provocative. But yeah, let's definitely talk about that though on our next thing or the next time we do this. But I think this is cool because if everybody you're meeting Carlos for the first time or if you've seen him before, Carlos is just awesome. He's a cool thinker. Um, but I wanted to ask you, is there anything right now what are you watching right now, Carlos? What are you reading? What's sort of what's on the docket? What's in your queue right now with things?
Let's see. I picked up a bunch of used books recently. I did pick up the quotable Darwin
Yes,
recently.
yeah,
That was
very cool.
interesting. Poked into that a little bit. Um, what am I reading? Well, I mentioned earlier, like about a month ago, I was going through Hofstadter's book, I Am a Strange Loop.
Hmm.
And I like the first two-thirds of that, I think. I think the thing about Hofstadter is he's very interested in like selfhood, what makes a human sort of an individual and that sort of thing. And my question is somewhat different, which is more like not so much what leads to consciousness or to selfhood, but what makes the human brain system, send rockets to the moon, and nothing else does that.
Mm.
So I think he's interested in selfhood, and I'm interested in capability. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
but those two problems are overlapping for a long way, and then they
Mm.
sort of split towards the end of the book, and become less interesting to each other. But
Yeah, that's
but
cool.
that's something somewhat recent. I had to look at my list to see exactly what's coming up next. But yeah,
What about do you have like do you watch any shows currently on Netflix or anything like that?
I just
Anything?
started watching the Gilded Age actually.
Oh yeah, I've seen or let me see seasons 1 and 2 of it. My wife and I have watched it. It's pretty good. I think it was done by the guy that did Downton Abbey, which I actually loved Downton Abbey whenever it was on back in the day. But I think it's Julian Fella, or I could be wrong about that. But what do you think about it so far? Okay, or kind of
Yeah, pretty good.
yeah, it's pretty good. And then podcasts. Anything you're listening to right now, Carlos?
I just went through all the Sarah Payne episodes with Dwarkesh Patel.
Oh,
Uh, those are pretty interesting.
what is he? Is that somebody you know, like personally, Dwarkish Patel?
Not really. I think it might have been met him once or twice, but the episodes just kind of go. I guess she's from the Naval War College or something like that.
Hmm.
Uh, they kind of go and talk about different geopolitical episodes in history. I think one of the episodes was all about Mao's strategy and how it
Oh,
came up with sort of insurgent type bottom up military strategy that was somewhat new.
oh
Uh,
man, that's cool.
Interesting set of episodes.
Yeah. And then as far as what is your what when you get up on a Monday, let's say, this will be the final thing. I asked this to Sam Kuipers too. And this is hard to this might be hard. What do you do on a Monday morning, let's just say? And this is just sort of
Well, I'm the opposite of you. I'm all on Twitter all day, every day. Twitter and X. That's where I am. But I think I've done more than like 600,000 words on
I
Twitter.
saw, yes, I saw you said that today. 630,000 words, I think is what
So
you
I don't
found.
know how much of that is just BS, whatever. But it is. It's only like 100 words a day, I guess. But it's like 10 years.
That's
So
crazy.
go
Yeah,
figure.
that's really weird. That's like the Bible, dude. I mean, that's like or longer. Shoot, I
Yeah,
don't know,
and
maybe.
if you read it, you would get much more than that. No. But
Actually, I mean, strangely enough, you actually would. I mean, maybe not historically, but okay.
no.
So that's cool. Well, Carlos, I'm gonna everybody, thank you for listening. I'll cut it first, and then we'll chat for 1 second. But this was the Falsifiable Podcast. This is Falsifiable Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Denton. I have with me Carlos de la Guardia, and this was really cool.